Great. So again, today's presentation is meeting Title II accessibility requirements, developing a web accessibility testing plan. I'm Michael Parker, the Director and Senior Accessibility Consultant at Access Ingenuity, and my email address is michaelp@accessingenuity.com. And today, the outcomes that we'd like you to take away from this is understanding an overview of the Title II accessibility requirements, identify key components of a comprehensive web accessibility testing plan, and then select appropriate combinations of automated and manual testing tools and establish testing frequency. So document and then track your accessibility issues, and finally create some reporting templates that demonstrate Title II compliance progress. So the first one is, what are the requirements? So the DOJ ruling on Title II, it was passed in April 2024, and they published a final rule to enhance web and mobile access for people with disabilities. And the effective date was June 24th of 2024. It applies to all state and local governments, as well as special purpose districts, commuter authorities, nonprofit organizations that provide public services for state and local governments, etc. And it also applies to third-party vendors. So the requirements are meeting WCAG, or the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA requirements. And it includes all digital content, documents, websites, mobile apps, etc. The DOJ ruling also talks about who must comply. So it's all U.S. state and local government entities. It's the third-party contractors and software vendors. And examples include things like state agencies, cities, schools, libraries, museums, transportation districts, among others. This is just a short example of some of the folks that need to comply. So with that said, you're in the mode of being one of the folks that do need to comply to these requirements. The first thing you probably want to do is think about developing a testing plan. And that testing plan should be a fairly comprehensive look at your website. And the way that we like to break it down is we'll typically look at an initial accessibility audit, doing a pretty comprehensive accessibility audit of the site. And we'll base this on an inventory that we developed of template pages used throughout the site. So some examples of template pages might be things like the home page, which may have things like a carousel, common headers and footers, and other content that's kind of unique to the home page. We'll also look at form pages. So that'll be like registration pages, contact us pages, or other pages that have form elements in it. We'll look at shopping pages, if there are any shopping pages on the site. And we'll also really try to focus in on things like FAQ pages, especially if they have expand and collapse content. We'll look at resource pages with videos and other resources, and then most frequently access pages. So if you have a list of the pages that are used most frequently on your site, that's also a great thing to include in your testing plan. And then any other unique pages. So if you have unique product pages or unique information pages, things like that, we'll want to include that in the testing plan. Besides web pages, you want to include the following in your testing plan. Any documents. So all downloadable documents that are available from the site. So if you have a resource page that has downloadable documents, this is one to really focus on as well, and assess those documents for accessibility as well. Any pages that house a lot of videos or audio. So any audio and video files hosted on the site should be tested for accessibility. And you will typically be doing that by a number of things that we'll talk about in a few minutes. Once you've done your testing, you'll want to do a post-remediation accessibility audit. And usually the goal with that is to verify that all the fixes that your team has worked on have been implemented properly. So you'll retest the original pages that were done in the initial audit, and then testing a sampling of the entire site. So we generally recommend testing at least like 50% of the pages on a site. Since you've already addressed all the design issues, this round of testing should be more focused on things like the content. So images, do they have proper alt text? Videos, do they have the right captions? Are they well described? Documents, are those made accessible? Are the headings associated properly and things like that? Probably you can leverage all the work that you've done in your accessibility review, so it doesn't need to be as comprehensive and detailed testing in this sampling of the entire site, but it should be a test of the entire site. And to think about some examples, I just thought I'd pull up the City of San Diego. So one example of a testing plan would be City of San Diego homepage. They have a kind of unique header, footer that's used throughout the site. They have a carousel, they have main content on the page. Then they also have the state of the city address. It's a page that kind of walks through the state of the city, and it includes video, expandable content, a PDF, at least one, if not more. And then there's also some get it done pages where they have frequently asked questions where you can schedule service from the city. So there's a search field, again, more expandable content, those kinds of things. I'm going to just shift over to that page now, and we'll just take a quick look at this. So we actually have a modal on this. So here's the City of San Diego page. And so we want to make sure that this header at the top gets tested. The footer at the bottom gets tested. That's probably used throughout the site. And then we're also seeing there's a calendar, there's some main content, actually some search fields in there as well. The state of the city address is on this page, and it has a video. It also has some expandable content that reveals when clicked, and then a downloadable PDF. And then the Get It Done page is where you can search for ways to get some things done if you lived in the city of San Diego. So talks about articles, how long do problems take to resolve, what qualifies as a 72-hour or abandoned vehicle violation, all these different things. So we can test the accessibility of that. And I'm sure for the folks that are really in tune to accessibility, you're probably picking out some accessibility issues already, noticing things like color contrast on hover or some of the other things that just jump out to you as not being fully accessible on this site. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. That's developing our test plan. So we're looking at that. We're trying to get the unique content identified on those pages. Then once we've got that addressed, then we want to get into testing the website for accessibility. And the plan should include two really key steps. The first one is to conduct automated accessibility testing. So automated testing is really an essential part of any testing process, but it can only address about 35% of the WCAG 2.1 or 2.2 level A and AA requirements. The other requirements are something that has to be done by manual testing. So some great automated tools, or ones you might want to consider, include DQ's Axe tool, the Wave tool, Arc, and Google's Lighthouse. So there's a bunch of different tools that you can use for that. And if we were just to go back to the city of San Diego, and if we were to apply the Wave tool, I actually have it loaded in my toolbar. What we're going to see is the results of the Wave tool. So we have several color contrast issues. And if I just looked at those particularly, we're seeing some low contrast with the blue header background at the top of the page, probably some things down below. If I look into the details of the site, we're seeing that there's some missing form labels and some alerts and some other things that we want to look at and investigate. So those are the kinds of things to look at. And then on the Get It Done page, we applied that there, we'd actually see even more things. So there's some form fields that have some accessibility issues. Again, a bunch of things with insufficient color contrast, and then quite a few alerts as well. Okay. Now we're going to just talk about the manual accessibility testing. So manual accessibility testing is really required for the other 65% of the issues on your website. And there's a couple of key elements with manual testing that you want to look at. You want to first start by selecting your environments. And we recommend including at least one desktop and one mobile environment. So desktop environments would be things like Windows or Mac, mobile environments, things like Android or iOS. So what we like to test with at a minimum would be Windows 11 Chrome with the JAWS screen reader. If you wanted to add to that, you could also do Windows 11 Edge and maybe the NVDA screen reader. And on mobile, we recommend testing iOS Safari with the VoiceOver screen reader, and then others as your client requires it. So the benefit of doing these kinds of comprehensive testing like this and looking at least one desktop and one mobile environment is that you're looking at the responsiveness of the site. The two desktop versus mobile do behave slightly differently. And so you'll pick up on a lot of the different issues that might be present, although there are some shared issues as well. So your videos aren't going to change from mobile to desktop, but the way that the video controls work may change, and that could be an accessibility issue. And then once you start that testing, you're looking at things like keyboard accessibility testing, screen reader testing, desktop and mobile, like we talked about, and using kind of the combination of screen readers that we just discussed, JAWS, NVDA, and VoiceOver. And other testing to consider would be testing all the videos on the site. So looking at captions, are there media alternatives? That would be like transcripts, or are the videos themselves sufficiently descriptive? Do testing for color. So color, there's several things we're looking at. We're looking at the color contrast of text. We're also looking at non-text color contrast, and even the use of color. So using color to convey information. We want to test things like resize, reflow, images of text. So there's a long list of all the WCAG requirements that we're going to go through and test. We're also going to test things like headings and labels, potentially error messages and error message handling, all of those things. So let's just take a look at this. And so what we're going to do is start with the City of San Diego homepage. And I think I'm not on the homepage now, but I'll get there. Again, I'll run this wave tool, and then I would look into what those issues are. So the first one is that there's 5 errors, 3 color contrast errors. And so if I wanted to look at the errors and actually only focus on those errors, I could actually turn off everything else and really just focus in on those. And I can also select them to move into them. And it looks like is that there's several form elements that are missing. Now, I'm actually not seeing those, so I might actually turn off styles. Sometimes that helps to find where these are. And it looks like what's happened on this page is that there's form elements at the very bottom of the page that are potentially even hidden that Wave is picking up. So I would have to probably go back to that and look into it, dig deeper into it. But that's what that's picking up. So that actually could be, it's a false positive. It could be that it's just not really hidden properly. Then the other thing that we're seeing, I'll turn styles back on, are the color contrast issues. And so if I go to the color contrast tab, then I can find those color contrast issues. And what it's doing is telling me about those things in the header, where there's a couple things that have insufficient color contrast, and those are kind of jumping out there as well. What it's not doing, and I think this is a really key thing, so what it's not doing is it's not picking up things that are color contrast issues on hover. So I suspect that read more news becomes an issue when it's on hover. It didn't grab the feedback, which clearly has insufficient color contrast as well, not even on hover. And then as we do hover on some of the different elements here, it's not picking those up. So that's all where you're going to be doing manual testing. And the next thing I think is really an interesting one. And this is one where testing with a screen reader is really important. Testing also with a keyboard is really important. So at the top of this page, and I am going to press the tab key. And the first time I press the tab key, it goes to City of San Diego. And then if I press tab again, it's going to connect with the city, translate widget, search, and then I'm into this menu. So right now I'm in the leisure, and it says explore, play, and events. And I tab through it. It goes to regional parks, community parks, recreation, and I have a really clear, visible focus indicator. So book an event, beaches, golf, more leisure. And then I tab again, and on the right, I can see that I have 4 links. I have Balboa Park, Torrey Pines Golf Course, special events in filming, and arts and culture. But as I tab, I'm not getting focus on any of those elements. So what that means is that here I am on more leisure, and I can actually count it out. I'm going to press tab 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now if I press tab again, it should go to resident resources, which it does. So basically what that means is that there's no visible focus indicator on those far left links in these panels. So if you're a keyboard-only user, you won't be able to actually access those unless you use a counting method like I was using. So fortunately, if you're a screen reader user, those are made accessible and available to you. That's the kind of thing that you want to be testing for. And if we go to another page, what we're going to see is that this header is on every single page. So that's going to really impact things throughout the site. It's not on the Get It Done page that actually has a kind of a different design, but all the main pages. So if we look at the next page, the state of the city address, we're going to look at the video itself and then even the expandable content. I'm going to do the same thing here and just I jumped ahead. I'm tabbing into this. I'm actually in the video now, and I can press play on the video, and the video's playing. I'm going to pause the video now, and then as I tab through the video, I can get to the captions and turn those captions on or off. I can get to settings. So just want to make sure that all those things are available as you go through this. And when those captions are running, that they're actually working properly. And so I just turned on the captions, and you're seeing the captions appear on the screen. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is go down to the expandable content. And so I have a good focus indicator on the expandable content, which is great. When I hover on the expandable content, I suspect a color contrast issue, although this looks like large text, so it might pass for that. And I just want to be able to press enter to expand it and then access that. So that is working properly. And then there's this read the City of San Diego progress report. And so when I get to the progress report, I've got the option to download a PDF, and then it also is displaying the PDF. So that's what's happening there. Now, I did load the PDF. I think I'll pull it up here. So this is the PDF that is on this page. And I pulled the PDF up in Adobe Acrobat Pro. And when I look at that PDF, the first thing I could do is look at the tags for it. And I can also look at the title. So first thing up at the upper left, we see that it's not displaying the title. So that is an accessibility issue. And then we're also seeing that it has what appears to be some issues with both semantic structure as well as tagging. So I'm on the second page is talking about housing. I've got a list of, I don't know, maybe 10 items. It's not structured as a list. There's no heading structure. And I think as we go through the document, we're going to find some reading order issues as well. And if I went over to look at the accessibility, just run a accessibility quick check in Adobe Acrobat Pro by going to the accessibility tab. When I do that, I'll find that it calls out the title. It says you should check the reading order manually. It's telling that the tab order is not set. And then it's also telling us that there's about 32 images missing alt text. So those are some of the issues on this PDF. So again, makes us think that, okay, we probably need to look pretty carefully at the PDFs throughout the site if such a prominent PDF has a problem. Okay, I'm going to go on from here. The next thing is the testing frequency and the process that you might want to use. So we recommend at least testing your sites annually, and that's kind of the minimum requirement. However, if you're bringing new features to a site and or new pages, we strongly recommend that those be tested before they go live. We're recently working with a client that thought they were making some minor updates to the registration process and actually broke several elements of that process from an accessibility point of view. They introduced new accessibility issues. That happens a lot of times when a new web page gets loaded. So doing some comprehensive testing on that before that page goes live makes a lot of sense. If you introduce a process that requires accessibility approval from a knowledgeable team member, such as a webmaster, before documents are posted or changes are made, that's actually a really great tool to ensure the accessibility of your site. So you kind of need a gatekeeper, basically, that will look out for accessibility and make sure that before things go live, there's a checkpoint and any content is actually reviewed. You also should be aware of new platform updates. So examples that we've seen recently include, we do a lot of learning module testing with the Storyline or Articulate Rise. When they make new platform updates, we often find that things improve, but sometimes things break. And so that's a good time to do a little bit of testing. When you create like a new Shopify theme, or if you do some major updates to a WordPress theme or those kinds of things, those things can really break accessibility. And so you probably need to go back and do some pretty comprehensive testing at that stage. And then during your accessibility testing process, it's really helpful to prioritize your accessibility remediation. So we like to prioritize accessibility issues based on user impact and then design complexity. So you can use this to address the most severe issues that are the easiest to fix first. So an example here, I've got a table listing out the severity levels and then the impact on users. So for example, severity level critical, that causes portions of the site to be impossible to use. An example would be that header for a keyboard user on the San Diego City website. So that's virtually impossible for a keyboard user to access some of that header menu. High causes portions of the site to be difficult to use. Medium impacts the efficiency of navigating the site, and then low can impact the efficiency of using the site. So those are lower severity issues depending on how the individual's actually accessing and using their assistive technology. So if you go back and look at the San Diego site, one thing we ran into was some color contrast issues. So that's probably something that can be fixed really, really quickly. We ran into issues again with an 8-page PDF. That is extremely easy to fix, and that's probably would take someone maybe a half an hour to repost that PDF and put it in an accessible format and have it as an accessible PDF. So getting those kinds of things done really quickly is great. And then feedback. So we've got this feedback widget with insufficient color contrast of white text on an orange background. That may be a little harder because you're working with like an external resources, probably put that feedback modal together, but hopefully you can adjust those colors fairly easily. Okay. The final thing to consider is how do you want to do your accessibility reporting? So the common accessibility reporting templates, it's actually used throughout the US and even internationally, is the accessibility conformance report based on the VPAT templates. And the VPAT 2.5 WCAG 2X format is the one that's pretty widely used. There's also international versions and some other versions as well. So that's one that I would strongly recommend, and I can show you a quick example of that. Other things you might want to do are add a web accessibility statement to your website and include a contact form or email address for users to provide feedback, and even a statement to people about how you tested the site for accessibility. So have you tested it in all environments, or have you tested it just in one environment? So what have you done to test that? So what a VPAT looks like, I'll just open up one now. So this is the voluntary product accessibility template. And an accessibility conformance report basically uses this template to report the accessibility of a website. And so in this case, it's looking at WCAG 2.0, 2.1, 2.2. And there's a table, and we'll kind of scrolling ahead here. There's a table where you would include what you've tested the site to. So did you test it to 2.0, 2.1, or 2.2 guidelines? And so you select yes or no. And then you basically fill out this conformance level and then add remarks and explanations. One of the things that jumped out on the San Diego site was focus visible. So we would say partially supports, and header menu, I want to say sub items are not, I probably need to word this differently, but anyway, do not display a focus indicator. So what that helps, if you create that for your site, you can document it so that someone else navigating the site can know what those issues are. And it can be a tool for you to prioritize your own efforts to fix things and improve the accessibility of your site. Okay. Thanks everybody for attending. I think that the next thing, if anybody wants to contact us, our team, with questions or ideas on future presentations, please reach out to us. We'd also be happy to help you with any of your accessibility needs. We do offer accessibility support for both documents and websites. In 2 weeks, we're going to go dig deeper into actually web accessibility testing basics. This is really more of developing your test plan. And then in the beginning of March, look at testing learning modules for accessibility. And mid-March, meeting Title II accessibility requirements with PowerPoint accessibility remediation basics. All right. Well, thanks so much. I'm going to stop sharing.